This is the first video in a series of videos in which I'll be comparing the ships of which I have built models. These videos will not go into the finer details of each ship, but rather look at the balancing act between firepower, protection, and speed. Today we'll be looking at the North Carolina, Alabama, and Missouri models. The Alabama model is yet to be constructed, however I have glued the hull together. This will be sufficient for the purpose of this video. The ideal scenario in which to compare these three aspects of ship design will be one where each of these features are varied while others are kept the same. Ideally, this would be done in the design of a single ship or a series of ships sharing a common design philosophy. As it would happen, the Americans obliged us. Within a 3-year period, the U.S. Navy commissioned 3 classes of battleships: the North Carolinas, South Dakotas, and Iowas, which were all designed for the same naval doctrine and conflict. This scenario came about due to the terms of the Second London Naval Treaty and the lead-up to World War II. The Second London Naval Treaty sought to place displacement and armament restrictions on ships to prevent an arms race. In the treaty, battleships were restricted to a maximum standard displacement of 35,000 long tons and 14-inch guns. The North Carolina class was designed to comply with these restrictions. Up until shortly after the keel of the North Carolina had been laid, its intended armament was 12 14-inch guns arranged in 3 4-gun turrets. In keeping with the common practice of protecting a ship against shells of her own caliber, the North Carolina's protection was designed to be effective against 14-inch shells. The planned speed of the North Carolina in her design configuration was 27 knots. Shortly after the North Carolina's keel was laid, the Allies activated the escalator clause of the Second London Naval Treaty. This permitted the US to construct ships with a standard displacement of 45,000 long tons and with a 16-inch armament. Due to the late stage in the North Carolina's design process and the reality that construction had started, it was only possible to upgrade the caliber of the North Carolina's guns to 16 inches by replacing the 12 14-inch guns with 9 16-inch guns. It was not possible to upgrade the ship's protection to be effective against 16-inch shells. By reducing the number of guns, the US Navy was able to commission a 16-inch gun armed battleship with a speed 1 knot faster than designed. This makes sense since the broadside weight of 12 14-inch guns is comparable to the broadside weight of 9 16-inch guns. However, the larger caliber of the 16-inch guns better packaged the weight, resulting in more effective firepower for the same broadside weight. The design of the North Carolina class clearly demonstrates how installing a larger caliber gun for improved firepower can be achieved without major consequences to the overall performance of the ship. Design started on the South Dakota class shortly before the Allies activated the escalator clause of the Second London Naval Treaty. The major element of the South Dakota class's design was to overcome the protection deficiency of the North Carolina class. The South Dakota class were to receive the identical armament to the North Carolina class and have a speed of 27.5 knots, just half a knot slower than the North Carolina class, while keeping to a standard displacement of 35,000 long tons. The question that immediately springs to mind is, how can you have a ship with more armor that is otherwise the same as one with less armor, seemingly without consequence? Where does the extra weight go? To get past this conundrum, the US Navy had a few tricks up its sleeve. The first trick was obvious: make the ship shorter. The more compact the ship, the less armor is required to protect it. A shorter belt means that the steel that would have gone into its length can go into its armor thickness instead. Of course, this is not enough to solve the problem. The second trick was to introduce a much greater incline to the armor. The larger angle between the armor and the shell increases its effective thickness. The consequences of thicker armor and its angle resulted in a bulkier hull. This is unfortunate, since the less streamlined the hull, the more water needs to be pushed out of the way. This slows the ship. The Navy was able to maintain the speed of the North Carolinas in the South Dakotas by using a combination of brute force and finesse. The brute force came in the form of more powerful engines. The older engine design installed in the North Carolinas was rated at 90,000 kilowatts, while the South Dakota's newer engine was rated at 97,000 kilowatts. Despite the more powerful engines, work still needed to be done to the shape of the hull. A feature of the South Dakota's hull that, as far as I can tell, is unique to this class in this period is the use of skegs on the outboard screws. South Dakota's contemporaries either had skegs on their inboard screws, like the North Carolina and Iowa classes, or did not have skegs on any of their screws. While skegs are installed for multiple reasons, the outboard skegs on the South Dakota class were designed to help with directing the water to create a smooth flow over the screws. The less turbulent the water around the screws, the more efficient they become. A shorter hull, inclined armor, and the shape of the hull all enabled the South Dakota class to achieve a speed only half a knot slower than the North Carolina class, with the same armament and better protection. After the activation of the escalator clause, the Navy began the design for the Iowa class. The Iowas were to be designed with a higher permitted standard displacement of 45,000 long tons and a 9-gun, 16-inch, 50 caliber armament and protection from 16-inch shells. The standout feature of the Iowa was its speed. The class had a design speed of 33 knots, making it fast enough to keep up with aircraft carriers. In effect, the Iowa is a faster South Dakota with longer 16-inch guns, with the ship's speed being the major differentiating factor. To achieve a higher speed, with all else being at least relatively the same, a much longer hull was required. A long, thin hull is hydrodynamically more efficient than a short, wide hull of the same displacement. This is because a thin hull has less water to push out of the way. The consequence of a straight section of hull is largely friction from the water sticking to the side of the ship as it slips by. This drag is considerably less than pushing water out of the way. With a considerably larger displacement and not much more water to move out of the way, there is space for larger engines to be installed to propel the ship to a higher speed. To achieve a speed of 33 knots, the Iowa required a power output from its engines of 158,000 kilowatts. This resulted in a speed only 5.5 knots faster than the South Dakota class, but required 61,000 kilowatts more power. This is because power required to propel a ship increases exponentially with speed. The final notable quirk of the Iowa hull has nothing to do with the performance of the ship, but rather the operational requirements of the U.S. Navy. The beam of the Iowa was dictated by the maximum width permitted for a ship to transit the Panama Canal. This is very important to the U.S. Navy, as it enables a rapid transfer of ships between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The result of this requirement is a unique hull shape that resembles a bottle when viewed from above. Considering that these ships were all designed and built a few years apart from each other, it is not surprising that they all have similar capabilities. The limited variations from one class to the next serves as a good illustration for how the fundamental design parameters of firepower, protection, and speed affect the design of a ship. The North Carolina class demonstrated the effect of increased firepower. The South Dakota class demonstrated the effect of increased protection, and the Iowa class demonstrated the effect of increased speed. The next video in this series will explore how other navies balanced firepower, protection, and speed in their designs. Thanks for watching. Cheers.